It's a Motorola APX 8000. If you're in emergency services, you know the weight of it. It's built to survive a 3-alarm fire, a 10-foot drop onto concrete, or being submerged in a flooded basement. This one was recovered from the driver's side floor well of a black SUV on the Dan Ryan Expressway late on the night of April 28th. The casing is warped. The plastic on the volume knob has actually bubbled and reset into a different shape, but it's the internal log that doesn't make sense. According to the digital forensic report from the Chicago Fire Department's radio shop, this unit was keyed. The mic was live. For 12 minutes and 47 seconds, the transmit button was depressed while the vehicle sat under the wreckage of a jackknifed semi. The logs at the dispatch center show nothing but a carrier wave, dead air, silence. The man holding that radio was Scott. He's 29. He spent the last 6 years with Engine 13. On April 28th, while that radio was keyed, Scott's heart was not beating. His lungs were not moving. Every monitor in the ambulance that eventually reached him showed a flat horizon. He isn't here to talk about the accident. He's here because of what was happening on the other side of that silence. The first thing I noticed wasn't the heat. It was the lack of it. When you're in a structure fire, even with the gear on, there's a thermal layer. You can feel the air trying to cook your lungs. But I was standing in the middle of a city and everything was venting. Black, heavy smoke was rolling out of the windows of every skyscraper, every house. It looked like a total loss, a citywide burn. But there was no orange glow, no sound of wood popping, just this heavy, unnatural weight in the air that felt like the moment right before a building collapses. That split second where the steel gives up and everything starts to tilt. I remember reaching for my shoulder, looking for my radio. I needed to call it in. I needed to tell someone the whole world was a 5-alarm scene. But my hand just hit my own collarbone. No turnout coat, no oxygen tank. Just me. I know how this sounds. I'm a guy who deals in facts. I deal in hose lines and hydraulic pressures. I don't see things, but I was there. I could see the soot on the sidewalks. Then I saw him. He wasn't standing. He was just there, right in the middle of the street. I've seen the pictures in the churches near the firehouse, the ones with the soft hair and the sheep. This wasn't that. This was a commander. His eyes, they didn't look like eyes. They looked like the core of a furnace when the oxygen hits it. Not red, but a white-blue heat that looked right through my skin. I didn't fall because I wanted to. I fell because my legs simply didn't have the structural integrity to stay upright in front of him. "Scott," he said. His voice didn't come through my ears. It hit me in the center of my chest like the thud of a heavy timber falling. "Look at the structure," he told me. I looked. He wasn't talking about the buildings, he was talking about everything. The people. The way they were moving through the smoke like they couldn't even see it. I saw a woman walking her dog through a cloud of black grit that would have choked a normal person, and she was smiling at her phone. I tried to talk. My throat felt like I'd been swallowing ash. I think I asked him why they weren't evacuating. Why aren't they running? Because they have been told the smoke is just mist, he said. They have been told the fire is just the sun. Scott is describing a phenomenon often reported in clinical death cases involving professional first responders, a situational size-up of the afterlife. On the night of April 28th, 2026, the Chicago area was hit by a localized microburst storm system. At 11:22 p.m., the Illinois State Police recorded a multi-vehicle collision involving a freight hauler carrying industrial-grade ethanol. The resulting fire was so intense it melted the asphalt on the Dan Ryan Expressway. Scott was the first vehicle behind that truck. When the semi jackknifed, his SUV was pinned beneath the trailer. He was technically inside a thermal oven for nearly 13 minutes before the first rescue squad could even approach the wreck with foam. I keep trying to find a way to make this make sense, to tell myself it was the trauma or the lack of blood to the brain. But the detail, it's too sharp. April 28th started like any other shift. A couple of medical calls, a false alarm at a warehouse. It was raining, one of those Chicago spring rains that feels like it's trying to wash the city into the lake. I was heading home. I remember the wipers on my car, back and forth, the rhythm of it. Then the semi in front of me it danced. It didn't look real, it looked like a toy being tossed. The sound of the impact was the last thing I heard. It wasn't a crash, it was a crunch, like a soda can. And then the silence. Standing there with him in that smoking city, I didn't feel like I was in heaven. I felt like I was on a reconnaissance mission. He took me by the arm. His grip wasn't gentle. It was firm, the way a captain grabs a rookie to keep him from stepping through a soft floor. "Look at the architect," he said. We were suddenly in a different place. It looked like a press briefing. High-end, lots of glass and steel. There was a man standing behind a podium. He was young, maybe my age, maybe a little older. He had this look on him. You know when you meet someone who just knows exactly what to do in a crisis? That calm, magnetic energy. He was talking about a new way to organize the world. He was talking about total safety. He spoke about ending the uncontrolled fires of war and poverty. He had a plan for the climate, a plan for the banks, a plan for everything. People in the room were weeping with relief. They looked at him like he was the one who was going to save the house. But I had the commander's hand on my arm. And as I looked at the man at the podium, the commander did something to my vision. It was like he slid a thermal imaging camera in front of my eyes. The man at the podium didn't have a heat signature. He was cold, dead cold. And the plan he was showing on the big screens behind him, it looked like a perfect map of a city. But through the thermal lens, I could see the gas lines. They were all rigged. Every single safety feature he was proposing was actually a way to lock the doors from the outside. I looked at the commander. I said, "He's setting a trap." The commander didn't nod. He just watched the screen. "He is the one who will promise the world a fireproof life," he told me, "and the world will give him the keys to every door because they are tired of being afraid." This vision presents a significant point of theological friction. In traditional eschatology, the figure of the Antichrist is often depicted as overtly villainous or monstrous. However, Scott's account aligns with a different, more nuanced interpretation: the deceiver as a supreme bureaucrat, a person who offers solutions to the very things that cause modern man the most anxiety: instability, environmental collapse, and economic chaos. The friction lies in the coldness Scott describes. If the figure is genuinely solving world problems, why is the spiritual heat signature absent? It forces a question that many theologians struggle to answer. Is a peace that costs individual agency actually peace, or is it merely a well-managed prison? I don't know how to explain the way that man looked at the camera. It felt like he was looking at me back in the future through a screen. He was talking about unified response. That was his big phrase. No more independent agencies, no more borders, just one command center for the whole planet. And the crowd, they weren't just civilians. I saw pastors in that crowd. I saw guys with crosses around their necks nodding along. They were saying, finally, someone with common sense, someone who wants peace. I felt this sick feeling in my gut, the kind you get when you're on the roof of a building and you feel the rafters start to hum. It's a vibration, a warning. I turned to the commander. I asked him, how can they not see the cold? How can they not see the gas lines? They have stopped looking at the source, he said. They are looking at the solution. He moved his hand and the scene shifted again. We were overlooking the whole earth now. It didn't look like a globe in a classroom. It looked like a living, breathing organism. But there were these patches of gray spreading across it, like a mold, or like a fire that had gone into the walls where you couldn't see it, just eating the insulation. The 5 alarms are beginning, he said. I didn't know what he meant. I'm a firefighter. We go up to 5 alarms for the worst fires, the ones that need every truck in the city. You must understand the stages of the failure, he told me. If you do not know the signs of the collapse, you will be caught in the fall. I wanted to ask him more. I wanted to ask why he was telling me, a guy who barely makes it to Sunday service and spends his time cleaning soot out of his fingernails. But the vision started to pull. It felt like I was being sucked out of a room by a backdraft. I reached out. I tried to grab the edge of the podium in that room or the commander's sleeve. I didn't want to go back to the car. I didn't want to go back to the dark. Wait, I said. I don't know the protocols. I don't know what to do. The last thing I saw before the smoke took everything was his face. He wasn't smiling. He looked like he was preparing for a war. The protocols are in the book, he said. and the strength is in the call. And then the blackness came back. But it wasn't the silence of the accident. It was the sound of a radio, keying in the dark, that carrier wave, that steady hum of a live mic with no one left to speak into it. I'm sitting in my apartment in Chicago now. It's been 9 days. I look at the walls of my bedroom and I wonder if the drywall is actually there. I look at the people on the street and I find myself squinting, trying to see if they have a heat signature. I keep thinking about the man at the podium. I saw his face. I'd know it anywhere. And every time I turn on the news, I hold my breath. I'm just waiting to see if he's the next one to step up to the mic. I can't look at my apartment the same way anymore. I'm sitting here, 9 days out of the ICU, and I'm looking at the corner where the wall meets the ceiling. I'm looking for settlement cracks. I'm looking for the way the light hits the floor. I'm a truck guy. My job is usually vent and enter. I go to the roof, I cut a hole, I let the heat out so the engine crews can move in. You get an eye for how much weight a roof can take before it pancakes. You learn to listen to the sounds of a building dying. And that's what the commander was showing me. He wasn't showing me a movie about the end of the world. He was showing me the pre-incident plan for a global collapse. I was still standing there with him, overlooking the earth, and the smoke was getting thicker. It was coming from the foundations now. There are 5 alarms, Scott, he said. Each one is a signal that the structure is no longer tenable. He pointed, and I saw the first one. It looked like a massive skyscraper, the kind that anchors a whole downtown district. But I could see through the dirt. The footings, the massive concrete blocks that hold the whole thing up, were sitting in mud. It wasn't even solid ground anymore. It was just liquid. The first alarm is the collapse of the exchange, he said. I saw people running out of banks. I saw digital numbers on screens just vanishing. People were staring at their phones, hitting the glass like they could force the money back into existence. They will tell you it is for the common good, he told me. They will say that a single digital system is the only way to stabilize the floor. But it is a snare. It's a way to make sure no one can leave the building without permission. Then he moved his hand. Second alarm. I saw the weather. But it wasn't just a storm. It was like the earth was trying to shake us off, like a dog shakes off water. I saw fires that wouldn't go out with water, and floods that came from nowhere. They will use the weather to justify the lockdown, the commander said. The man you saw at the podium will tell the world he can stop the storms if everyone just follows his code. They will worship him for the shade he provides while he is the one stoking the furnace. Scott's description of the first alarm involves a specific financial transition. In late 2025, several G7 nations began the pilot phase for central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Unlike traditional electronic banking, a CBDC allows a central authority to program the currency, setting expiration dates on funds or restricting where and how they can be spent. Scott's vision of the foundation in mud mirrors a growing concern among economists regarding liquidity traps in a purely digital economy. The transition is often marketed as a solution to systemic instability, yet it introduces a level of granular control over individual transactions that has no historical precedent in free societies. I wanted to tell him that we have protocols for this. In the department, we have a command and control structure. We have a way to handle chaos. But the commander just looked at me, and I felt like a kid playing with a toy fire truck. Third alarm, he said. I saw a map of the Middle East. Specifically, I saw the lines around Israel. They were glowing. It looked like an all-clear signal had been given. I saw people hugging, signing papers, laughing. It looked like the fire was finally out. When they say all clear, that is when the roof falls in, he said. It was a quote, I think, from the Bible, but it sounded like a warning from a battalion chief. This piece is a tactical retreat. Scott, it's a way to get the guard down before the final push. I felt the air getting thinner. It was like being in a room where the oxygen is being sucked out by the fire. Fourth alarm, he said. This one was the hardest to look at. I saw people standing in lines. They were getting something. It wasn't a mark like a tattoo, not exactly. It was more like a lockout, tagout system. In the fire service, we use lockout tagout when we're working on heavy machinery. You put a physical lock on the power switch so no one can turn it on while you're inside. But this was different. This was a lockout on the human soul. I saw people waving their hands or their faces over scanners to buy food, to enter buildings, to even start their cars. It looked so convenient. No more keys, no more wallets, just you. But I saw the logic behind it. I saw the man from the podium again, sitting in a dark room, watching a screen. He could turn anyone off with a click. If you didn't follow the unified response, if you didn't nod when he spoke, your tag went red. You couldn't buy bread. You couldn't get water. You were locked out of the world. The word deception in the original Greek of the New Testament is apate. It doesn't just mean a lie. Its root refers to being led off the path. In ancient Greek hunting, an epee was a specialized trap designed to look like a safe clearing. The animal enters the clearing because it is tired of the thicket. It wants the convenience of the open space. Scott's professional lens of lockout tagout provides a modern technical parallel to this ancient concept. The system isn't presented as a threat, it is presented as life safety equipment. The deception lies in the fact that the safety mechanism is controlled by an authority that can use it as a weapon of exclusion. The fifth alarm was the one that made me want to go back to the car. I saw the churches, I saw the one my mom goes to, I saw the big ones downtown. They were full, people were singing, they were raising their hands, it looked great on the surface, but I had that thermal vision again. There was no heat. The building was cold. The people were cold. They were singing songs about unity and love, but the name of the commander, the real name, was being phased out. It was being replaced by generalities. They were talking about the spirit of humanity or the global family. It was like a unified command that had forgotten the chief. I asked him, how do we fight this? We can't vent this fire. We can't put a hose line on a deception. The commander stepped closer. He looked at me, and for a second, the retroactive disbelief, the part of me that thinks this is just a brain bleed from the accident, it just died. He was more real than the asphalt on the Dan Ryan. You need the radio calls, Scott, he said. He didn't give me a book. He gave me 2 transmissions. He told me I had to memorize them because there would come a time when the normal channels would be jammed. The first call is for the morning, he said. It's the daily pre-trip. He told me to pray this. Lord Jesus, Satan wants to sift me like wheat. He wants to see if I'll crack under the pressure, but you have prayed for me. Your strength is my structural integrity. When I am weak, you are the load-bearing wall. Keep me from the temptation of the easy path. I trust you to keep my feet on the solid ground. Then he gave me the second call. He called it the survival breath. He said it was for the times when you're trapped in the dark and you can't see your own hand in front of your face. Lord Jesus, you sustained your people in the wilderness, and you sustained John on the island. Sustain me now. When the world locks the door on me, remind me that you are the door. When they call me an extremist for following the truth, remind me that you were the first witness. Give me the endurance to stay at my post until the final call. I am not alone because you are in the room. In a study published by Dr. Sam Parnia in The Lancet, researchers documented cases of highly organized functional capacity in patients during periods of 0 cerebral blood flow. This is the medical term for what Scott is experiencing, the ability to receive, process, and memorize complex information while the brain is clinically inactive. Scott's recall of these radio calls is anomalous because of the linguistic structure. They aren't the kind of sentences a 29-year-old firefighter typically constructs. The load-bearing wall metaphor, however, is a bridge, a way for his professional mind to anchor a spiritual concept that should, by all medical accounts, be impossible for him to retrieve. I don't know why he chose me. I'm just a guy who knows how to force a door and drag a line. But as he gave me those calls, I felt something shift. It wasn't peace. It was readiness. It was the feeling you get when the tone goes off in the station and you're jumping into your boots. Your heart is hammering, but your mind is clear. He showed me a group of people then. They weren't in a big church. They were in a basement. They looked tired. Some of them looked like they hadn't eaten in a day or two. But when they prayed those calls together, I saw it on the thermal imaging. The room was white hot. The heat wasn't coming from a furnace. It was coming from them. They were sharing a single loaf of bread, and as they pulled it apart, the heat signature stayed the same. It didn't get smaller. These are the ones who know my voice, the commander said. They don't need the world's universal currency because they have the source. They don't fear the lockout because I have the keys to the kingdom. I started to feel that pulling again. The vision was fading. The smoking city, the man at the podium, the lines of people, it was all starting to blur into a gray mist. Wait, I shouted. What about the final battle? What happens when the structure finally goes? The commander looked at me one last time. He reached out and tapped the spot on my chest where my badge would be. Stay on the radio, Scott, he said. The extraction team is already on the way. And then the sound of the rain came back. The wipers. Back and forth. And then the jolt. The kind of jolt that feels like your whole soul is being snapped back into a suit that's 3 sizes too small. I'm sitting here now, and I'm looking at my pre-trip list for the truck. I'm looking at my gear. But all I can think about is that basement. All I can think about is the heat in that room where there was no fire. I'm starting to realize that the 5 alarms aren't something in the future. I can hear the first one ringing right now. I can hear the foundation cracking. And I think it's time to check the radio. I keep telling myself that the brain does strange things when the blood stops. You hallucinate, you dream. But dreams don't have this kind of tactical detail. They don't have the grit. The commander wasn't done with me. The smoke in that city was starting to thin, but it wasn't because the fire was out. It was because the fire had consumed everything that could burn. It was just the bare bones of the structure left. He took me to a place called Megiddo. I've heard the name in movies, but looking at it from above, it looked like a massive staging area. I saw the armies of the earth. They had the best tech, the drones, the tanks, the unified response systems that man at the podium had promised. They were all gathered there, and they actually thought they had a chance. They are preparing to fight the sun, the commander said. I looked at those armies, and then I looked at him. He wasn't in his work clothes anymore. He was the king. His eyes were that white-blue heat again, and on his head were crowns that didn't look like gold. They looked like they were made of the very stars they were holding together. Behind him was the extraction team, thousands of them, all in white. No soot, no tears in their gear, just pure blinding light. I asked him, "Is this the battle?" "There is no battle, Scott," he said. "There is only the word." I watched as the man from the podium, the one with the cold heat signature, stepped forward. He looked up at the commander, and he didn't look afraid. He looked arrogant. He thought he had the lockout tagout system. He thought he owned the building. The commander didn't use a weapon. He didn't pull a sword. He just spoke. I couldn't hear the word, but I felt the frequency of it. It was the sound that created the world, and it was the sound that would end the rebellion. The Antichrist and his advisor, the one who performed the fake miracles with the demonic heat, they were just gone, caught, extracted. They were thrown into the fire that never goes out. The armies just fell. They didn't even have time to key their radios. The victory is already on the board, the commander told me. My people must simply stay at their posts until the shift is over. The vision of Megiddo, or Armageddon, is historically treated as a kinetic military conflict. However, Scott's account emphasizes a structural resolution. This aligns with the literal translation of the biblical sword of his mouth, a judicial and creative force rather than a physical blade. In forensic engineering, every structure has a resonant frequency. If you hit that frequency, the building collapses instantly. Scott's description of a word that functions a frequency suggests a finality that bypasses human warfare entirely. The extraction is less about a war and more about the ultimate overhaul of a failed site. Before he sent me back, he gave me the 3rd radio call. He said this was the one the apostles used when they were facing the end of their own shifts, the call of victory. Father in heaven, we are in the hour of the test, not our will, but yours. The nations are raging and the people are plotting against your chief, but we know you sit in the heavens and you see the truth. Your kingdom cannot be shaken. Give us the grit to endure. Help us to love the ones who are setting the fires. We don't fear the ones who can kill the body. Our lives are hidden with the commander. Come quickly, Lord Jesus. Even so, come. He looked at me then, really looked at me. Tell the crew to wake up, Scott, he said. They're sleeping in the bunk room while the alarm is screaming. Tell them to clean their gear. Tell them to love me more than they love their own lives. Time is shorter than the next breath, but my grace is enough to get them through the smoke. I tried to tell him I wasn't the right guy. I'm just a firefighter from Engine 13. I don't give speeches. You're a witness, he said. Just tell them what you saw at the scene. Then he tapped my chest again, right where my heart was supposed to be beating. And then the world came back. The medical record from Northwestern Memorial Hospital, ICU Bed 4, dated April 29, 2026 at 11:35 p.m., contains a notation by the attending cardiologist. It reads, "Patient exhibited spontaneous return of sinus rhythm after 12 minutes and 47 seconds of asystole, unresponsive to standard ACLS protocols. No neurological deficits observed upon arousal. Patient's first recorded words were, 'Check the radio log.'" The radio log mentioned in the host intro, the one that was keyed for the exact duration of his death, remains a technological anomaly in the CFD archives. It was like being slammed into a wall of ice. I gasped. My ribs felt like they had been crushed by a hydraulic ram, which they had from the CPR. I could taste the copper of blood and the plastic of the intubation tube. The lights in the ICU were too bright. Everything was too loud. A nurse was there. She was screaming for the doctor. I remember her face. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. I tried to move my hand. I wanted to reach for my shoulder. I wanted to see if the radio was still there. I wanted to tell her about the commander, but I couldn't talk. I just laid there, watching the monitor. Beep, beep, beep. The line wasn't flat anymore. It was a mountain range. The doctors called it a miracle. They said there was no way my brain should be functioning. No oxygen for almost 13 minutes. No pulse. I should have been a vegetable. But I sat up 2 days later and asked for a glass of water in my boots. But I'm not the same. I look at the news now, and I see the architect at the podium. I see the unified response taking shape. I see the weather events and the banks wobbling. And I know the alarms are ringing. I'm back at the firehouse now. Light duty. I spend a lot of time cleaning the saws and checking the oxygen tanks. My captain thinks I'm just being thorough because of the trauma. He doesn't know. I'm not just cleaning the gear. I'm waiting for the call. Sarah Miller, the night shift nurse at Northwestern who first saw Scott wake up, gave a brief statement to the hospital's internal review board. She said, "It wasn't just that he came back. It was the way he looked. His eyes weren't dilated. They weren't confused. He looked at me like he was waiting for a command. He didn't ask where he was. He asked if the message had gone through. I've been in trauma for 15 years. People don't wake up from a 12-minute flatline and ask about radio logs." Scott sits in the back of Engine 13's bay when the shift goes quiet. He doesn't talk about the light or the feeling of peace that most NDE survivors describe. He sits with a heavy physical awareness of the structural failure he saw. He watches the dust motes in the afternoon sun, and he waits. The silence in the firehouse isn't a lack of noise. It's the heavy, loaded quiet of a crew that knows the tone could drop at any second. I'm looking at my hands right now. There's still a little bit of grease under the fingernails from working on the truck this morning. It's real. The table in front of me is real. But I can still feel the weight of the commander's hand on my arm. I can still see the blue-white heat in his eyes. I went to the radio shop yesterday. I asked them about that Motorola. The guy told me the internal log was a write error. He said the trans button must have been jammed by the steering column. I didn't argue with him. I know what happened. I know that for 12 minutes and 47 seconds, the channel was open. I keep the 3 radio calls on a piece of paper in my locker. I don't need the paper, though. I know them by heart. I find myself saying them when I'm driving or when I'm standing on the sidewalk watching the people in Chicago rush past me. They're all so busy. They're all so worried about the unified response. I just keep my eyes on the horizon. I'm looking for the smoke. I'm listening for the frequency of that word. I'm just a guy on the shift waiting for the extraction. The EKG strip from April 28th is filed under case number 2604-28DE. It shows a perfectly straight line that lasts for the length of 3 city bus routes. There is no tremor. There is no glitch. Just the absolute absence of life. It's a document that creates a specific tension for the neurologists at Northwestern. They can explain the accident, they can explain the trauma, but they cannot explain how a brain with zero electrical activity for nearly 13 minutes could return with a perfectly preserved, technically complex memory of a global incident plan. Scott is back in Chicago. He's 29. He still wears the uniform of Engine 13. But if you see him on the street, you might notice he isn't looking at the traffic or the skyscrapers. He's looking at the soot on his own sleeve.